the wisdom bird. This one, it's a tale of Solomon and Sheba, and it's retold by Sheldon Oberman and illustrated by Neil Waldman. King Solomon could answer any question. He could solve any problem. Even the birds talked about his wisdom. They flew all the way to Africa telling everyone, King Solomon is the wisest man in the world. They even told the Queen of Sheeba, who was also very wise. Some say she was the wisest woman in the world. Now, when the queen heard about King Solomon, she said, I want to meet this clever man. And she called together her servants, her warriors, and her nobles, and she told them, we are going to Jerusalem. And they sailed by ship across the Red Sea. And they traveled by camel caravan through the Negev desert, and finally they reached the high gates of Jerusalem. Her servants sang and drummed. Her warriors danced and shook their spears. Her nobles brought forward gifts of gold and silver, spices and incense, and many wonderful creatures of Africa. But the gates stayed shut. Finally, the queen called out, I am the Queen of Sheeba. I have come to meet King Solomon. And for a moment, everything was still and silent. And then from inside the city, 100 trumpets blew, and the high gates of Jerusalem opened wide, and out came Solomon. Great queen, he said, you have traveled so far and brought me so much. What can I give you in return? Teach me something important, she replied, something worth all these gifts and all my time and trouble. So King Solomon invited her to sit beside his throne, and she watched as he solved every problem that his people brought him. And she listened as he read to her from his book, the Song of Songs. And she asked him many questions, and he answered every one. Now, said Solomon, have I taught you something important, worth all your gifts and all your time and trouble? And she shook her head. No. She said, you have great knowledge, but show me what you can do with it. Name anything, said Solomon. If it can be done, I promise I will do it. Build a palace out of bird beaks, she said. Now, everyone was shocked. That would take all the beaks of all the birds of the world. I have promised, Solomon said, so I must do it. And he led her to the top of the highest tower in the city, and he called out to the birds of the north and the south and the east and the west, come to Jerusalem, give up your beaks to me. And hour after hour the sky grew darker and darker with beating wings, and it grew louder and louder with the chirps and caws, hoots and trills, until all of the birds of the world had arrived, except for one, the Hoopoe, a small, colorful bird with a long, thin beak. It has disobeyed me, said Solomon. And he called to the eagles and owls, the falcons and hawks, search for the Hoopoe. Find the Hoopoe and bring the Hoopoe here. And they searched and searched for the Hoopoe bird and quickly brought it back. And the little bird begged Solomon, please don't punish me. I was on my way, but I stopped to find you a gift. And I found 3 gifts, 3 things you do not know. King Solomon knows everything, the other birds called out. How can a bird know more than the wisest king? Little Hoopoe, said Solomon, if you can teach me one thing I do not know, I will set you free. So the Hoopoe asked Solomon 3 questions. Here is my first question, said the Hoopoe. What was made the longest time ago and meant to last the longest time from now? And Solomon answered easily. It is the world and all its creatures. You birds were made at the beginning of time and meant to last until the end of time. And he asked the birds, am I right? And they all agreed. The geese and ducks, the swans and pelicans, the cormorants and cranes. Oh yes, they agreed. And Solomon thought, the birds are meant to last forever, but I am changing them. The second question the Hoopoe asked, what is so gentle that it's used to feed a baby, and yet so strong that it's used to break through earth and wood, to build a home and fight off enemies? Again, Solomon answered easily, a bird's beak. Birds use their beak to gently feed their young, yet they use their beaks to dig through earth and trees for food, to build their nests, and to protect their families. Solomon asked the birds, am I right? And all the birds agreed. The parrots and the woodpeckers, the crows and the kingfishers, the hummingbirds and the jays. Oh yes, they said, and sadly lowered their beaks. And Solomon thought, their beaks are so important. What will they do without them? So here is my third question, said the Hoopoe. What drop of water does not rise from the ground or fall from the sky? And again, Solomon knew the answer. A tear. It rises from an unhappy heart, and it falls from a sad eye. And he asked the birds, am I right? And again, they all agreed. The mourning doves and meadow larks and nightingales and chickadees and the peacocks and the parakeets. Oh yes, they said, and their tears began to flow. And Solomon thought, the birds are crying because I am taking away their beaks. And he felt so sad for them that a tear came to his eye. Great king, said the Hoopoe, you have answered all my questions and I have failed. And King Solomon lifted the Hoopoe onto his finger. Little bird, you did not fail, he said. I knew all the answers, but I did not understand what the answers meant. Now I do. And Solomon called to all the birds. Now I understand that you are important, and your beaks are important, and your tears are important. And I will not hurt you or any creature just to show my power. I will not punish this bird of wisdom, and I will not take your beaks. What a celebration. Those millions of birds rose into the sky, soaring and swooping and calling out the happy news. And yet just as quickly they returned and settled into silence, for Solomon had turned to Sheeba. Great queen, said Solomon, I promised to build a palace of bird beaks. I have failed. And the queen smiled. You did not fail, she said. I wanted you to teach me something important, and you did. You taught me that it is better to break a promise than to do something that is wrong. Will you free me from my promise? Asked Solomon. And the queen shook her head. Not yet, she said. Then what do you want me to do? He asked. Think of a way to reward the Hoopoe bird, she said, for it has taught a king and a queen, and it has saved all the birds of the world. You are so very wise, said Solomon to Sheeba. Let us reward this bird together. And together Solomon and Sheeba made a crown of gold. Wonder of wonders, as they placed it on the Hoopoe's head, the gold turned to feathers. And the Hoopoe bird sang out in joy, a crown! I have a crown of golden feathers. And from that day on, every Hoopoe bird was born with a crown of golden feathers. So it was, and so it is, And so the whole world can see and understand that no matter who we are, we all have great things to learn, even from a little bird.